This tutorial is the longer, detailed version, but if you would prefer a shorter video that is straight to the point, check out the description or the link above. Hi everyone, I'm Vanissia from the Woolly Worker Knitting Podcast, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to go from these types of color, which are not very neat, irregular, maybe leave some holes at the place where the neck meets the sides, and maybe you're picking up stitches differently on the right and on the left like this. And instead, I will show you what I like to do with my colors nowadays, and it's to create a crochet slip stitch edge, which creates this really neat horizontal line of stitches that you can pick up from, but there's also a way that you can do it without having that horizontal line, and it still creates a neater place for you to pick up your stitches from. It doesn't affect the stretch of the neckline, it's really easy to do, only takes about a couple minutes extra, and I'm sure that everybody has the materials at home. So if you want to see how I do that, then keep on watching. Let's get into the materials. The first thing you're going to need is a crochet hook that is 1 or 2 sizes smaller than the needle you intend to use for the neck ribbing. It might take a bit of trial and error to find what works for you, but it's something that you'll eventually figure out. You also need your regular color needle that your pattern calls for, and I also recommend getting 1 size bigger for when you're going to knit together the live stitches and the cast on edge, just to keep that stretch and make sure that you can pass the color over your head. So again, this is something that you can experiment with, and it will vary from person to person. Okay, so what you need to do is you need to grab your crochet hook and then maybe start at the back of the neck where it would be less visible. So I'm going to go here on the right back of my sweater. And what you're going to do is you're going to try to insert your crochet hook in the exact same place that you would normally with your knitting needle. So if I were to pick up my stitches like I normally would, I would go right in the V of those stitches underneath the 2 legs of my cast on edge. So I would put my needle right through there and go under 2 strands, and that is what I'm going to do with my crochet hook. So I go right there under, and as you can see I have the 2 strands of the stitches. So let's do that with yarn, and I'm just going to simply follow my pattern and the ratios that it tells me. So for my pattern it tells me to cast on 1 stitch per column of stitches at the back neck, so that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to start here and I'm going to place my crochet hook at the place that we identified. I have the 2 legs of my strand here, and then I'm going to get some yarn, hook it through, keep the tension with my fingers, and pull it through that loop. And I'm going to pull on my tail a little bit to secure it. And something that I like to do, but it's not necessary, is I'm just going to chain 1, and it's going to secure it in place even more. So here's what we've got so far. We've got a chain. Now I'm going to go in the next stitch over, place my crochet hook under the 2 strands, yarn over, pull through, and I'm going to give a bit of slack, I'm not too tight, and I'm going to pull that loop through the loop I already had on the crochet hook. So let's do this again. I'm going in the next stitch over, going right under the 2 legs of the strand, yarn over, pull through, give a bit of slack, and go right underneath that other loop. So here you can see I have 2 stitches, slip stitches that I've just done. And I'm going to keep going all the way across until it is time to work the shoulder edges. So this is where it's important for you not to be too tight, because we don't want puckering, and we also don't want to not be able to get the sweater over our heads. And you can see here my line of slip stitches that is sitting right on top of my back stitches. So now we're reaching this part where my pattern tells me to use a different ratio. So as you can see here, I had some straight rounds with no increases, and for this I've got to pick up 2 out of 3. Then it's going to be a slanted edge where I'm going to go back to picking 1 in each again. So let's pick up 2 out of 3 now, and because I'm picking up the stitches in the opposite direction now, it's going to look a little different. I'm going to pick in my selvage edge. And if you've picked up stitches before with needles, it's the exact same thing. We're going in the same location, just with a crochet hook. So here, there's a bit of a transition. I'm just going to go in a place I think is going to be neat. And slip stitch. 2, and then skip the next one and go in the next one. And now we're going to go back into the ratio of picking up 1 for each row. And again, I'm keeping my tension relatively loose. This is my front of the sweater, and we've got a bit of a loose strand here, so I'm just going to pull everything tight. And again, here my pattern tells me that I need to pick up 1 stitch for every column of stitches. So again, I'm just keeping in mind the fact that I want a nice neat transition for this section. This is usually the part that is not the neatest when I pick up the stitches normally. So just taking my time, figuring out where is the best place to put my hook through. And I'm going to go in here, do a slip stitch, then go in the next column of stitches, do a slip stitch. I'm just going to do a couple to see what it looks like, and if I'm unhappy I can always rip back and try again. And the really nice thing about crochet is that you can rip back more easily and there are no loose stitches. So let's look at what this looks like, and yes, I am happy with this transition. There's no gaping holes. So I'm just going to continue ahead and continue picking 1 stitch in every column until I reach the other side of the neck. And we're almost reaching the beginning where we cast on here. And so I'm just going to get my crochet hook, go under my first slip stitch, so you can see the V here, pull through and pull through. And then that's it. We've just done our slip stitch edge. So it doesn't look like much now, but we've just added an entire chain of slip stitches across. So if you've counted your stitches, you should have the right amount of neck stitches that the pattern tells you to do. And if you don't, that's okay. You can always decrease them in the next round. So don't worry too much about that. But what we're going to do now is we're going to place our needle, the same needle that we're going to use for the neck ribbing, into the loop that we just left from our crochet hook, pull on the tail or the working yarn to make it nice and snug. And here we have 2 different options, and it totally depends on your personal preference. We can either go in the middle of our slip stitches like this. As you can see, there's the left leg here and the right leg here, and I'm going in the middle. Or we could go under both strands and then pull the yarn through. And if we do that, it's going to be a more invisible neck edge. As you can see, I've just lifted the strand under the slip stitch edge. What I personally like to do is I like to go under one leg and bring the yarn back up. And I like that this makes one of the legs visible. So here I've picked up a few stitches and you can see that I am getting this horizontal line of slip stitches, and this is what I want. But if you don't like this line, you can feel free to go under both legs like I just demonstrated. So just continue doing this all around. You go into each of the slip stitches, so a 1-to-1 ratio, and take your time, make sure that you're not splitting your yarn, not missing anything, and you've already done the hard work of finding the location, so you're really just picking up stitches. So here I'm just at the end of my row almost, just got a few more stitches to pick up. And that's it. So now if we look at our sweater, we've just picked up the stitches all around, and here at the front edges, which are usually temperamental spots, we've got this nice little edge here and there. So now if you want to, you can start your ribbing normally. So I would put a stitch marker and I would start my 1x1 rib like so. But what I like to do to get my ribbing even neater is I like to do my ribbing inside out. So to do that, I'm just going to undo those stitches. Is I just do one simple German short row. So I'm going to turn my work, move my beginning of round. I've got my yarn in the front. I'm going to slip my stitch on the other needle, pull the yarn back so you can see the little legs, get the yarn back in the front, and then purl, and then knit, purl, knit, and so on. And then when I get to that stitch here, because the next one is a purl, this stitch is going to count as a knit. So when I'm coming here at the end of my row, I'll just knit this round, purl the next stitch. And what this is going to do is it's going to give me a really nice ribbing on the right side of my work. So I'll show you what that looks like when we're done. So as you can see, I finished doing the ribbing on the neck. I did the required amount of centimeters, some rounds of double knitting to make a fold, and then a bit more length here. And as you can see, the ribbing is really neat because we did it inside out. So I've just done one German short row again to get me back on the right side. And I've also changed my right needle into a size bigger just to make sure that I keep some stretch on my neck and I can pass my head through the hole. So we're going to go and sew or knit together the live stitches and the pickup edge, and to do that we're just going to be picking up a stitch at the edge. Make sure that you follow the same column of stitches. So I've got this knit stitch here, which is then going to be a purl stitch on the wrong side here. So I'm going to follow that line all the way down to the beginning, and I'm going to pick up the stitch here and then knit two together, and I'm keeping things a bit loose. Then the next stitch, which is a purl, I'm just going to knit it alone, and I'm going to pass the previous stitch over to bind it off. Then we're going to start those two steps again. So for the knit stitch, I go down all the way, I find the next purl column at my cast on edge, pick it up and place it on my needle, knit two together, and then bind off the previous stitch, keeping things loose. Then the purl stitch, we just knit it and then we bind off the stitch before. So one more time, the knit column becomes a purl on the wrong side. So we look up for the purl stitch here, place it on the needle, knit two together, pass the stitch over, knit the next one, pass the stitch over. And we're going to keep repeating that for the entire neck edge, and I'll meet you when that's done. Okay, so I've just got two more to do. So pick up the stitch, knit together, pass, and then just knit normally. So then we end up with just one stitch on the needle. I'm going to cut my yarn, pass the yarn through that loop to secure it, and I'm gonna weave that in later. But here is our neck edge. It will block out and get even a little better afterwards, but I'm really pleased with how this looks. You can see that it looks really nice on the vertical edges, on the horizontal edges. Like I said before, you can skip that line if you don't like it, but I personally think that it's a really nice detail. It's still very stretchy for me, because I'm a loose knitter, but like I said before, be careful of what needle size you use and what crochet hook size you use. It also doesn't leave too much of a bulk at the back, as you can see here. So I hope that you found this video useful, and I'll see you all next time. Happy knitting! Bye!